Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Mario is Missing. In the last part we did the entirety of the second floor of Bowser's Castle, and now we're starting off the third floor with a very familiar sounding song. Like I mentioned, I think it was in part 2, you can actually get a good judge on where you are, not only just based off where the map is, but also based off of the music. Because we heard this song before, you can tell we're probably going to be in the United States. Although I think the United States is one of like the 2 countries in this game that gets its own theme. And admittedly, because we visited this country twice, it's also fairly easy to tell which one we're in because the United States only has, I think, 2 cities in the entire game, at least on the map. So, that's gonna be easy. At this point, really, if you've gotten this far in the game, there's nothing really standing in front of you anymore because the game never really gets higher in difficulty the farther you go, and it's basically the exact same as the start throughout. The more I guess the closest is maybe the size of the maps, but otherwise, it's a game meant for little kids to not only entertain them, but also to educate them on some stuff, for instance, stuff about the Rockefeller Center. But that, I guess, is always the risk with games like this. You don't want to make it actually have a big difficulty curve, otherwise little kids who are the target market are going to do too well in it, I suppose. But then that also runs the risk of losing interest as well, because if you don't keep the game interesting enough, it kind of fails as an entertainment game as well. Also, for some reason, King Kong's an item yet to return to the Empire State Building. 102, it's nicknamed after New York's nickname. Yeah, how the hell was a Koopa carrying around King Kong? And just think, I know I'm fairly close to running out of things to talk about with this game because I've basically discussed everything about it. And we're only 3 parts in out of what it could have been possibly 6 or more if I hadn't done the editing. Either way, since we had to talk about the New York State Building, the Empire State Building, we're clearly New York City. Oh wait, no, there's 3 cities in the United States in this game. I forgot about Dallas. We never have to go to Dallas. In fact, I'm not sure if any of the 3 versions have you go to Dallas. New York is actually one of the more annoying towns to move around in, though, because there's 2 pipes that work between each other at the very start, at the very bottom and the very top of the map, and getting around can actually be a bit complicated in terms of that. I guess that is the closest the game gets to a difficulty curve. There's more inconvenient quick travel points, and some of the streets aren't as connected. Alright, let's see what we got here. Oh my god, that was actually just Jesus I saw there. Gee, I wonder what city in the world has a giant Jesus statue looking over it. Also, I know I mentioned throughout the game I love the backgrounds for these games, but this is probably my least favorite one. Because even though I think it actually does a pretty good feeling of depth to it, I like the cityscapes. And that's completely it. It's because I like cityscapes more than some landscape stuff when it comes to sprite work. This city, though, is a fairly easy one because all things considered, there's very few streets and junctions. Therefore, going from place to place is actually fairly short in this place. They're also going to notice me do something kind of out of the normal when it comes to this floor. I skipped the 3rd town and moved right on to the 4th one. That's just because I think the 3rd one's a thematic finale. Christ the Redeemer. Didn't think I'd read that in a Mario game. I know we need to pass that in, so let's return to the spotlights, and it's made from that and that. I actually do remember, there was one point in particular that, during one of my Chinese classes, because I took Chinese as a foreign language class in 6th through, I think, 7th grade. And I distinctly remember that thanks to the China section earlier on, I actually got some test questions right about that. Namely when it came to the Forbidden City and all that. I don't remember much from my Chinese class years. In fact, I probably remember Only like 3 or 4 phrases in one full sentence. And that's mostly just because not only lack of practice, but also Chinese is a very difficult language to learn. Especially for a native English speaker like me. Oh, and by the way, we're in Rio de Janeiro, if it's not entirely obvious by the Christ the Redeemer statue. You know, it seems kind of out of left field, but at the same time, in the early Zelda games, until, I want to say, Link to the Past was the earliest time they abandoned it, Hyrule was supposed to be a Catholic country, hence why the shield had a cross on it and all that, so it's not the most out of left field thing, I guess. Oh, return of my either favorite or second favorite song in the game. This is... Okay, I remember which place this is now. This city is one of the weirder ones in that it's one of the few that has a diagonal street in it. There's only like 3 or 4 in the game that have it, I think. There's probably even less than that. And that's actually a bit weird for navigation, just because things don't line up properly. Thinking about it, though, because the diagonal streets for some reason reminds me of difficulty curve for some reason, probably because it's more of a curve. You know, it's really not because they're also straight. Either way, I suppose the way they could have done a difficulty curve for a game like this is beyond more complicated street layouts. Maybe have more artifacts in like the cities in floors 2 and 3, and maybe even less cities so they can have more focus on that. I suppose that could work. Let's see, who lived here? That person, and they did that. I suppose now that I think about it, another thing this game is kind of guilty of, and a lot of edutainment games like it are, is that a lot of the questions it uses are of the same variety. It's usually like, who did this? When did this happen? So on like that, which, mind you, as basically a history class for a 3rd grader, if not lower, I guess makes sense, but yeah, also it's not obvious. Pyramids, built to be tombs, on the Great Pyramid. I wonder where we are. We are clearly in Cairo. Makes you wonder where Jotaro Kujo and all of them are at this point. Although, actually, no, I think Stardust Crusaders ended in like 92 or something like that. I forget. I haven't read Stardust Crusaders in like 2 damn years. And now it's time for us to head on to our second to last level. And this, I think, is this the one I'm thinking it is? A lot of these, as you can understand, kind of blend together. Yes it is. Okay, I recognize that clock there in the center. Also, another background I absolutely love. Big surprise. Part of the thing with this game, admittedly, is that it's probably not best for me to have played it in one sitting and recorded these commentaries in one session, because you just kind of run out of things to say or interesting things to do. Because even more than some arcade games, it almost feels like edutainment games are the most repetitive ones out there. Bust of Shakespeare, huh? I wonder where Shakespeare's from. Big Ben? Oh boy! Yeah, we're in London. I do admit I like the bluntness with some of these ideas because, for kids at least, that could help with recognizing locations. Like, I didn't know anything about the name Cairo when I was a little kid. When I was in the Egypt level at my youngest age playing this, I recognized that the pyramids belonged in Egypt and that Big Ben belonged in England and all that. So I guess maybe that recognition's why some of these questions are so blunt, but... Thankfully, we're almost done, because we just passed in our last artifact on our second to last level. Because we only have one more town section left after this, and it's not a very interesting one. But now that we have Yoshi, let's head on over to the blue pipe, which is below me and to the right. God, that sprite's weird looking. And there's actually a thematic reason why I saved the third level in this tier for last. It's not so much that it's like the hardest level or the most annoying. It's just rather appropriate given where Mario's from. Also, another background I really like. I like that pink. It's also a fairly small map, all things considered. Gee, I saw those characters on that building there. I wonder what country we're in. And given the music that we're hearing as well, it sounds fairly Eastern Asian, doesn't it? Yeah, though, we're in Tokyo. Honestly, I'm surprised they saved this for a third tier level, because for a Mario game, it feels like it should be a first tier for some reason. Because the way I guess a design mentality could be for a game like this is to facilitate a sort of difficulty curve. Start with the lesser, with the more commonly known countries like the United States, England, Russia, Japan, China, all that. And then get progressively more and more obscure as you proceed through the tiers. And that would actually in some ways work, unless they're one of those kids that happen to know the random stuff because they read a lot as a kid, like me. But yeah, I suppose it's all subjective as well. Japan, though, as a whole, not a very big level. It's also some of the easier questions to answer, all things considered, too. Thankfully, I can say for a fact we're nearly done here. Mario's Missing has almost a missing climax. I say almost because we're going to get something. It's up to you whether or not to debate whether or not it's worth it or not. Also, I know I probably should mention this back in part 1. I know I go through these little newspaper things really quickly. Yeah, it's basically just so you can pause and try and read it yourself. Yeah. I give about as much effort to these LPs as the makers of the game put into them, hence why my Final Fantasy stuff with Kenny is fairly in-depth, but for an edutainment game made for 6-year-olds, I'm gonna be playing it as much as I can detail, yeah, but when it comes to commentary, I can only care so much about this. Mind you, I suppose it's also the issue of it being an edutainment game made for, again, it's like 6-year-olds. It's just not my market. Either way, that is all 5 cities on the 3rd floor cleared, meaning it's time for our boss of this tier. I believe this is Roy. Same as the others, runs back and forth, but I think he's a little bit faster. 6 conks on the noggin, and he is out. And after that, we go through that door, and we're just gonna be treated with Endgame, which is a lot funnier in the DOS version because the voice acting is horrific. Wow, we just murdered Bowser. Yeah, that's Mario is Missing. It is most certainly a video game made for 6-year-olds to both entertain and educate. I'm never gonna go back to it. It's not a good game. It's not meant for me, but I still have some nostalgia for it, and I'll give it this, again, good-looking backgrounds, because those mountains in the background are gorgeous for Super Nintendo standards. If you want to play it for some reason, it's on Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, and DOS, I believe, are the only ports of them. DOS, by the looks, is the most fleshed out, but the Super Nintendo is probably the one most people are familiar with, like myself. In terms of what's next up for LPs, well, let's put it like this. If this was as impromptu as this one, it'll probably be something random from this list I'm looking at right now. And I am sorry about that buzzing that's been in the background the entire game. I don't know what's with that. Because it wasn't there at the very start, but then the moment the title screen appeared, bzzz. That's weird. Either way, with that, I'm going to need them to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and I almost said in the next part. Have a great night, and take care, everyone. See you guys then.